Right guys, today we're going to be doing a JZS171, that's a 1JZ-GTE VVT-i. In this case, it is going to be plug and play into a GX100, originally with a 1GFE. So, let's do this. Right, as I said, this is a 1JZ-GTE VVT-i from a JZS171. It's going to be going into a GX100. So we have made this harness plug and play. The customer was able to supply us with both harnesses so we could map them out. Okay, it is a fully modular harness. As you can see, it is all completely brand new because obviously the JZS171 has the ECU in the engine bay and the GX100 has it in the vehicle itself. So first thing we're going to do is we're actually going to go through the build process, show you guys exactly what it takes to make one of these, and obviously show you all the sub harnesses that are made for the specific harness. All right, so let's do that now.
Break, always fight, never quit, do it right, play the game, win it life, have no shame, there's no time, feel the pain, live the grind, I could change, in my mind, pick a lane, commit and climb, the only way to win it life, I never miss, that's fact, taking big swings, put your hand to the bat, put me in the ring, you'll go out in a bag, cause I sing what I mean and I bring it to the mad light, ain't got time to kill, I got time to feel, I took the red pill, I know life's short so I wanna live real, but how's it supposed to feel? How's it supposed to feel? How's it supposed to feel? They wanna say my name, but they holding back. They wanna say they hate, but they know it's cap. I ain't play no games, I just do that's fact. And I don't feel no shame, it's a mood you lack. I go crazy, nah, but I ain't lazy. Track after track, I work on this shit daily. Pass me the jack, right as fuel, got me hazy. About to unpack all these things I've been chasing. I've got visions in my head, like memories.
Right, so now you see exactly what goes into the process here, and what we're going to be doing today is a couple of things. We are going to be doing the layout, so I'm going to go through the entire harness section by section so the customer Barry knows where everything goes and plugs in. Then what we're going to do is some testing with just the ignition on and obviously with the engine running. So I'm going to make a little contraption there to try and interface with the GX100 body plugs over there. Okay, so obviously the unique thing about this particular harness is it is plug and play to a GX100. So he originally had a 1GFE. He is going to be using a manual gearbox behind the 1JZ-GTE VVT-i as well. So starting over here at the ECU end, we've obviously got our little patch harness, which this is going to interface with the GX100 vehicle. We've then got the body plug, or the first of 3 body plugs. This is going to plug directly into the GX100. On the ECU side, we've got basically just our 5 plugs, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They're all unique. You can't plug them in the wrong way, so there's no drama there whatsoever. Now, as the JZS171 was an auto originally, we fitted one of our automated transmission emulators to the ECU to make sure that everything is running correct as it should. So that takes care of that. Now, what you'll notice is we've got a couple of things here. So what I have done is I've allocated the ability to activate the AC magnetic clutch relay if the customer wants to do that. I've also allocated a pedal position sensor plug over here. So effectively, what that's going to mean is this whole harness is designed with the ability to be upgraded further down the line. So for now, it's not going to be used. But later on, if he wanted to fit a Bosch drive-by-wire throttle body and use a separate pedal, he can then do that directly from here, which will make things a lot easier for him. Okay. Moving along down here, you'll see we've then got our breakout where this little body plug comes out over there. Then the harness travels along there until we have another breakout, which is just over here. That then goes to the other 2 body plugs for the GX100. So those are those 2 over there. And again, they're going to plug directly into the vehicle and everything should work. Then we're going to move along here and we've taken the original GX100 grommet and we've reutilized that on here. We then have that sealed to the section because obviously we know where this needs to be. And outside here, because they do get hot, we have fitted the 3 resistors to remove the last 3 codes for the automatic transmission emulator. So as this comes out the firewall, these can just be mounted down below where no one can see them. Keep them nice and cool in the engine bay from there and stop doing anything inside the vehicle itself. Engine harness is going to move along there. We're going to have our next breakout. And at this breakout, we are going to have our, again, this is a modular harness, so it is designed for expansion. So you see here, we've got the ability to add a wideband oxygen sensor. In this case, it's blanked off because he's using the standard ECU, so he cannot use that functionality in this particular case. The next one is our ignition sub-harness. So what you'll notice here is there's no igniter in this particular section of harness. What we have done is, because I kind of realized that if you guys wanted to change the coilover plug later on, if you went with an aftermarket ECU, which is why I have this here to show you that we can make you a patch harness to replicate that, and you can run any ECU you want from there. But back to here. So on our ignition harness over here, at the moment we're running the standard system for the 1JZ with a standard ECU. So our actual igniter plug is over here, all nicely labeled for you guys. So this igniter, because it needs a ground, it can be mounted on the firewall there and just plug in there out of the way. The harness then runs along through there and it just plugs into your normal standard coils over there. So as you can see, the idea is that if you ever wanted to upgrade to an aftermarket ECU, we could then just unplug this harness. You can then take the igniter away and all the coils, and we can plug in a harness with, say, Denso, Audi, R35, whatever coils you wanted basically from there. All right. Next section that pops out over there is your injector harness. So again, all nicely labeled for you guys. You can see everything, and obviously these 2 plugs are different, so you can't really plug them in the wrong place. But again, that is going to the injectors, and in this case, because standard ECU, he's using the standard Denso type injectors, and this will obviously just tuck all the way down in here and be nice and neat and out of the way. All right, and again, same story. If you ever wanted to change injectors because he bought an aftermarket ECU and we made a patch harness for that, he can just literally unplug this over here and then plug in whatever injector he wants. He can just give us a call, tell us what connector he needs. We can make him one, send it out in the post to him. All right. Coming further along there, and we're going to have another breakout over here. So first thing we're going to break out to is our 2 ground points. So if you're familiar with the 1JZ-GTE VVT-i, obviously the actual inlet manifold is about here. And on there's a nice flat machine surface with 2 bolt holes for ground wires. So they are going to go there. Plenty of length there for those to go. The last little section that breaks out there is just going over to our cam sensor over here. So again, I think the label's going to be underneath there, but anyway, is all labeled as cam there for you so you can see exactly what's going on there. Moving further along to here, we have another breakout, and here we have quite a few things coming out, so I'm going to go through them now with you. Give me a minute. And first of all, we've got the throttle plug, okay? So basically in this case, as he's running a standard 1JZ throttle, we've got the drive-by-wire plug, we've got the TPS plug, and we've got the accelerator pedal position. Right, remember, because the 1JZ JZS171 with the EDCSI is actually drive-by-wire. So the accelerator pedal position is on here where the cable goes, and then on the outside you've got your TPS and you've got that, hence why this is sort of broken up in that way, so you can plug that to the accelerator position and then bring these out and around to there. Now normally in his case this would actually be going down through the hole over here, popping out on the bottom over there, and then obviously going to the sections that it needs to go into. I've just got it on top here because we're going to be using a 2JZ-GTE VVT-i, so I need all the throttle stuff on the top here. Okay, that's just for testing purposes. Right, let's start going through the rest of the stuff that comes through there. You can see all of the wires going down into there, and I've got everything here, and it's all lovely and labeled for you guys. So I'm going to start with this one over here, and that is your starter solenoid. Let's focus that in. There you go. So that just literally goes into there like so. Nice and simple, okay? In this case, we have his gearbox harness over here. So again, this has a speed sensor and a reverse switch wire, because again, we can interface with all of that. In this case, I think he's running an R154 if memory serves me correct. So we've got an R154 harness there. There's your reverse and there's your speed. All right, so that is that section over there. Next up, down at the back here, we've got our knock sensor. So you can see K and K there, K and K there. Again, same story. It's going off to the narrowband knock sensors that come standard on a JZS171. But as I said, we've built everything in here. So we've got twin core shielded cables, so we can change over to Bosch wideband knock sensors if he ever wants to upgrade his ECU. Next up, we've got our oil. So again, you can see they're labeled oil, and if I flip that over, anyway, oil. All right. Now in this case, because standard ECU, we're just using the oil pressure switch that comes on the JZS171. No dramas there. Right, next up here, we have our fuel. So again, as I said, it is a modular harness, so we have added the ability, if he changes to an aftermarket ECU, we can obviously add a fuel pressure sensor. So in this case, it is blanked off because he's going to be using the standard ECU for now. Right, and then we have a couple of the plugs that are standard on a JZS171. So this is your PRG vacuum solenoid valve. And if I look back through here, we've got our fuel pressure up solenoid over there as well. So you can see these come with the standard Toyota connectors, because obviously you wouldn't ever need to change those out, even if you went with an aftermarket ECU. Okay, so last one over here is the AC. I have blanked that off because at this stage we don't know if the customer wants to have AC. And obviously we have to figure out how we would make it work in the car. But basically, I've given the ability there to have the whole AC plug wide up to the JZS171 ECU, but obviously we blanked it off over here. Right, so that's all of these sections over here, and I think there's one last one. Oh, there was hiding away in the corner there, and this is your power steering pressure switch. So like the IS300, the JZS171 has a power steering pressure solenoid, and this obviously reaches over and plugs into it. It is running in one of the power steering lines over there. Now that is actually used by the ECU to up the idle. So it knows what pressure the power steering system is under. So if it needs to raise the idle, it can do that. Right. Moving along from there, the harness is going to run along there, around through there, and we're going to break out just over here as it enters the cam cover. And first thing that's going to come out here is going to be our oil control valve for our VVT-i solenoid. So that tucks in over there like that. Also coming out of there is going to be our coolant temp sensor. So let me just get this up here. So you can see that is labeled as CLT. CLT. Now in this case, because the customer is actually going to be needing a temperature for the dash, we have actually made him that particular plug. So in the JZS171, unfortunately, these temperature sensors didn't come into play. Luckily for you guys, in the water bridge here where the temperature sensors go, there is a blanking plug, and you can put a JZX100 temp sensor in. And we put the correct connector on for a JZX100 temp sensor. If you're interested in what a JZX100 temp sensor looks like for the gauge, it's that one over there. This is obviously, I use this as well for the 2JZ-GTE VVT-Is. If you go aftermarket, like with an IS200 or 300 plug and play, we fit those in there so you can have a temperature. And as you can see, it's right next to the coolant temperature on the 2JZ-GTE VVT-I. Right, then the harness moves along here. We have another breakout here where the coils are, and that's going to be for these two sections that run down here. So first one is going to be your lambda sensor. This is a standard lambda sensor that comes on the JZS171. So again, if you ever change that aftermarket ECU, you could tuck this out of the way and you could use the wideband plug that we have in there. Next up is on the particular end, on the JZS171, you have an air bypass valve, which is basically a fancy way of saying Mac boost valve, okay? So what we've done here is we've put a 2-pin DTM plug on here, so that if you ever went for an aftermarket ECU and you wanted to use a Mac boost valve, well, guess what? You can now plug a Mac boost valve into here and obviously control it via an aftermarket ECU. Okay, so that's those two sections over there. Then the harness runs down along here, breaks out down here, and this is where we end up with our mass airflow sensor. Right, so that is going to be that over there. We also run down to our crank sensor, which goes over there. Now, the astute amongst you will notice that we haven't got an alternator plug, but that is absolutely fine. With the GX100, like the JZX100, the alternator plug is built into the body section over there. Unfortunately, as he came with the 1G, it's on this side and the alternator is now on that side, but obviously we're going to make him a little section that he can then extend the alternator plug from there around to here and plug directly into there as well. Okay, so that's going to make his job nice and easy. Right, so that is the entire layout. As you can see, this is fully upgradable. You do not need to change the main engine harness itself. We've given you the ability to, and I didn't even mention on the throttle plug here, you could actually even swap this out to a Bosch drive-by-wire throttle. We've got everything in there that you need to run a Bosch drive-by-wire throttle on there. We've given you the pedal wires inside the vehicle, so you can actually run a pedal inside the car. And so on. So you've got loads of upgradability. You can change coils, you can change injectors, you can change NOx sensors, you can add fuel pressure. I don't know if I mentioned as well, but oil, we have the ability to add oil pressure and temp in here as well. So obviously we are just using unused wires on the ECU there. And obviously we can then make a patch harness from there. So again, really, really nice setup. It doesn't limit you guys. You can do whatever you want and upgrade. And as we know, you guys do like to upgrade further down the line. Obviously, you start at one point and you want to get to the next point. And obviously we try and make it as easy as we can for you, because once you've laid out for this, you are pretty much ready to go upgrade to your heart's content without having to spend loads of money and get a completely brand new harness built as well. Okay, so as I said, everything is labeled nice and neat. Hopefully this video will help when you actually putting the harness on to make sure you know where everything is going. And like I said, the nice thing, super upgradable. All right, so what I'm going to do now is I've got to get ready to start doing the testing. So I'm going to work out my interface, and I've got to interface with these body plugs. I'm going to use my IS200 cluster there, which will give us a lot of the information that we do need to make sure that it is coming through. So let me do that, and I will be back in a second, guys. Right, so guys, we are back now for the testing of this engine harness, and as you can see, there's a change of scenery here. Basically, the GX100, because they had a 1JZ-GTE, was actually quite similar to an IS200, so I decided to use my IS200 half cut to do the testing of this one. So have adapted it to fit the IS200. So as you can see, it is slightly messy over there, but it gets the job done. So what we're going to do now is the testing is broken up into two sections, one with the engine run, so one with the ignition on and one with the engine running over there. So first thing I'm going to do, we're going to go through a test that we're going to carry out today. Then we'll jump in and do the testing with the ignition on. So with the ignition on, first thing we're going to do is we're going to do the check engine light and the oil pressure. So again, I'm looking for the check engine light to appear on the dash. I'm looking for the low oil pressure light. Now, you'll notice there for my other tests, I haven't got alternator light, and that's because in the GX100, like the JZS171, the alternator actually forms part of the body harness, not the engine harness. So I don't have any means of interfacing with the alternator itself. Now, obviously, if you know IS200 at all, the oil light is actually transmitted via MPX, which is why I still have my little MPX converter device there. So basically, I'm feeding the oil pressure switch to that particular device, and that is then going to give me my oil lights on the dash. So it shows me that it's working as it should do. Next up is going to be OBD2 test, and what I mean by that is basically want to make sure that the machine is actually connecting to the car, make sure that it's picking up that it's a JZS171 crown, and making sure that I can read live data. So as the GX100 does have an OBD2 port, this will plug directly into the OBD2 port that's inside the vehicle. There's no special secondary OBD2 ports. You'll see here I'm connecting basically to the standard OBD2 port that'd be in the driver's side, and so therefore in the GX100 the same rule would apply. You just connect to that device over there. When we're in the machine, we're going to be then testing the fuel pump. So because the ECU is controlling the fuel pump, and in the description down below, I have a couple of videos on stuff like for instance, how the fuel pumps work. So I do recommend you go and have a look down there, have a watch. I'll put some useful information specifically towards like 1JZ-GTE VVT-Is in there as well. So again, lots of useful little videos. But the fuel pump one is quite useful because things like the Toyota Lexus, they don't prime their fuel pumps. Now, I get phone calls about that, even though I put the videos in there, because basically people didn't realize that before they did the engine swap, their fuel pump didn't prime. It's just the first time they've actually tried to listen to it. So effectively, they didn't realize it didn't do it before. They're just actually realizing now that it doesn't do it because it's something that's coming fresh to your mind because of the fact that you're doing an engine swap. Next up, we're going to be testing the speed and reverse. So obviously, we've got the gearbox harness on here. And like in my other videos with the IS200 plug and play ones, we've got our speed sensor and we've got our reverse light over there. So again, I have interfaced those with the IS200 so that we can see that information exactly like we would on an IS200 plug and play as well. Next up, when the engine's running, we're going to be doing the starter circuit. So that's nice and simple. Just put the key in and start the car. So that's going to kind of imitate the plug and play nature of the GX100 harness. Then we're going to test the drive-by-wire. So effectively, I'm just going to activate the throttle there. So remember, these are actually drive-by-wire. They do have a cable on them, but as you can hear, there's no throttle blade moving there at all until I get to the very end. And you can actually hear the throttle blade moving over there now. So basically, this is the first iteration of their drive-by-wire, and that was kind of like a limp-home mode type of thing. If you push the accelerator all the way down, it does rev up, but it's actually only opening the throttle body a small amount. Right. After we've done that, then we're going to come back over to our machine and we're going to test the oil control valve. Now, when I do that, the engine's most likely going to die. That's not a problem. That's exactly what I want to happen. They're telling me that the oil control valve is working and it's advancing and retarding the inlet cam. Next up, we're going to go to injectors and coils. So what I'm basically going to do is, injector number 4 is a real pain to get to because it's right underneath the ender manifold there. So I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, 5, and 6. It'll idle nice and smoothly, and I'll undo each injector one by one. They'll all misfire, and then we'll use the process of elimination to work out that number 4 is working just fine. Then we're going to come back and we're going to look at our tacho signal. So we're making sure that the tacho is working on there, and that should be absolutely fine. And then we're going to come over to the coolant temp. So again, in this case with the GX100, like the JZX100, they actually had a separate coolant temperature sensor for the gauge. Again, they didn't use MPX like the IS200. So again, my little orange box is doing that for me. So in this case, if you're wondering, if you have a look underneath here, you'll see I've actually got two coolant temperature sensors. That's the standard one for the ECU, and that is actually a JZX100 coolant temp sensor, funnily enough, and that's screwed in over there. So that's where I'm getting the temperature from for my little device to appear on the cluster. Once we've done that, then we're going to go into diagnostics. So we're going to make sure that we've got no codes. That's what we're looking for. We fitted the ATMU device to get rid of all the automatic gearbox codes. We fitted the 3 resistors to get rid of SLU, SLN, SLT. And obviously in this case, I fitted that 1GFE map sensor onto the power steering pressure switch, pressure sensor, so that I can get rid of that code over there. All right. So without further ado, let's jump in and go and put the ignition on so we can start doing the testing. So again, nice and simple. Hit it up over there. And obviously you can see we've got our check engine light in the corner there. We've also got our oil light in the bottom corner over there, so that is absolutely fine. Right, moving along, we want to check the OBD2 machine, so I'm just going to get it to connect, and you can see there already it's picking up as a JZS. We'll choose 175. We'll choose previous 2000 because this one doesn't have an immobilizer in it. Those will be after 2000. And we will let this thing auto-detect. It does take a little bit of time. So what I'll probably do is, while this is busy, let me go along and do the reverse and speed, just so we don't have to wait for that particular thing to go through. Right, so as per our normal IS200 ones, it's going to be nice and simple. First of all, for the reverse, all I'm basically going to do is literally just touch that wire together. And you can hear the usual reverse beep. So that's telling me the circuit is complete all the way through. All right. For the speed sensor, we're just going to go and test all 3 wires. So this is my little device. It requires power and ground. Now, with Toyota and the speed sensors, they are what we call a Hall effect speed sensor. So I have access to a 12 volts and a ground, and obviously a signal wire. So in this particular case, what I'm going to do is, and it's again difficult single-handedly, but I'm going to supply power to pin 1. So pin 1 is 12 volts. I'm going to supply power to, ground to pin 2. And as I do that, you can see now my device is powered up. So I know the 12 volts and the ground are working exactly as we expect them to. And then lastly, we are looking for speed. So all I'm going to be doing is touching the speed like that to pin number 3. And as I do, you'll see that the speedo is working on the dash. So that is absolutely fine. Okay. All right, so we'll disconnect all of that. Now we've finished with that, so that's perfect. Right, so as we come along here, you'll see no problem at all. It's picking up as a crown, as a JZS. So let's go into the engine section over here. So we know the OBD2 is working absolutely fine. And as I said, I've got it plugged into the standard OBD2 port. So nothing funny at all there. When it gets into the GX100, the customer Barry will be able to plug in a diagnostic machine into his normal OBD2 port, and everything will work as expected. Right, so let's go over to data list. And then what we'll do is we're going to be testing the fuel pump. So once we see all the live data, then we'll just go into the active test, and then we'll do the fuel pump testing. So we should be able to see, there you go, 28 degrees engine, 18 degrees exterior, 17% throttle, etc. So we are getting some live data through there. Right, let's go on to fuel pump. So as you'll see there, there's fuel pump relay and fuel pump. If you watch my video, you'll understand exactly what that means. Just for your information, the GX100 doesn't run the fuel pump resistor. Again, it'll make sense if you watch the video. Right, so we're going to turn on the fuel pump. There you go, so you can hear the relay clicking. So let me just, I'm going to move the camera over closer because the relay's over here by the battery. So 3, 2, 1. Fantastic. Okay. Right. Super happy with that. That means the fuel pump is working exactly as we expected to. So what I'm going to do now is I am going to run the vehicle up. So you can see we've got absolutely no coolant temperature there whatsoever. So I'm going to get a little bit warm just so we can actually see some coolant temp there. As we run through the test with the engine running, that should rise up, and that'll tell me that it's actually reading the coolant temperature. Right, so let me do that and I'll be back in a second. Right guys, so now we are back and we're going to be doing the testing with the engine running. Doing a very quick recap on what we are exactly going to be doing, and then we'll jump straight into it. So first of all, the starter circuit. So basically, does the engine start when I turn the key? That's what I'm checking. Drive-by-wire test. We're going to give it a bit of a rev there. So make sure it is revving from the get-go. That tells me the drive-by-wire is working. Oil control valve, just jump over to the machine, test the oil control valve. Like I said, more than likely the engine's going to die. Absolutely fine. Don't worry about that at all. That's exactly what we want to happen. Then we're going to move into injectors and coils. So I'm going to unplug all the injectors so we can hear it misfiring as I do that. Then we're going to come back, look at the tacho, look at the coolant temp. So you'll see I've got a bit of coolant temperature on there already, so that's good. And then we'll come back and we'll look at the diagnostics. So without further ado, let's start her up. So again, simply turning the key. And there you go. You'll notice that our check engine light and oil light has now gone out. That is absolutely spot on. Right, so let's go ahead and test the drive-by-wire. So let's give her a rev. Right, so that's perfect. Right, oil control valve. Let's go over and test the oil control valve over there. So VVT-i bank 1. There's only one bank, so it's all good. Cool. Right, so as I said, perfectly normal. That tells me that everything is working as I expect it to. Back into that over there. Fantastic. Okay. Right, so now what we're going to do is we'll go back to the normal data list and let's pop over and test those injectors and coils over there. Right, so we'll start here at number 1, number 2, number 3, that one. Then we got number 4, which I can't reach, but number 5 I can. Right, so we're going to presume number 4 is working absolutely fine. So let's leave that alone and let's pop over here now. So that is injectors and coils. Looking at the tacho, it is working and it's about accurate. So it's about 1,200 RPM. Let's give a bit of a rev. There you go. Rightio, so that's the tacho. And let's look at the coolant temp. So you see the coolant temp has actually gone up. That's exactly what I wanted to see. What we're going to do now is we're going to quickly go to the diagnostic trouble codes, because you can see we've got no check engine light on there and indicated by the fact that we have absolutely 0 codes on here. Alright, let's turn that off. Get rid of my ear defenders quickly. Okay, so as you can see, check engine light goes off, oil light goes off, all of that is working, coolant temperature is going up exactly as I expected to, and we've got 0 codes on the ECU. So there's absolutely nothing on this ECU that you call the check engine light. So Barry, if you do have a check engine light, when you come to fit it, there's probably a sensor of some description that's wrong on your engine. Okay, so just bear that in mind. Now then, regarding the diagnostics, obviously you can plug in an OBD2 level machine. This is obviously a Toyota intelligent tester, but you can get loads of them from multiple different companies. Just remember that your engine is a JDM engine, so some of these testers do struggle with JDM engines, so do bear that in mind. I'm not assuming that every single one is going to work 100% with your setup, so yeah. Now then, because this is a JDM ECU, we do have another way of doing diagnostics. Right, so if you watch any of my other videos, you would have seen me done this before on other engines like 1JZ VVT-Is, 1JZ non-VVT-Is, etc. But in this particular case, all that you're going to be able to do is in the OBD2 port in the driver's side, you can bridge pin 5 and 13 or 4 and 13. It doesn't really matter which one you do. But what that'll do is it'll put the ECU into diagnostics mode, and that will then cause the check engine lights to flash the diagnostic error code. Okay, so if you get the light coming on and you don't have a machine handy, paperclip will get you sorted, so you can actually see what code you are is being generated by the ECU, and you can figure out what sensor is causing your problem. All right, so how I'm going to do it today is because I don't want to go and unplug the OBD2 machine and try and bury around in the back there. Luckily, on the older IS200s, so the 98 to like 2000, 2001 models, they had this little port over here, and that's actually connected to TC, which is the same one that's pin 13 on the diagnostic port, so I have 2 places to access it. Obviously on a GX100, I'm not going to assume anything. I don't know if it has this particular port in the engine bay. It very well might do. I don't know. But in this case, I'm just using this one because I know it's here and it allows me to carry out the test that I want to carry out. Right. So I'm just bridging ground with TC. You can see that the drive-by-wire has changed notes, the stepper motor. And what you'll notice now is we have a flashing check engine light. Now, In diagnostic code world, that basically means there are 0 codes. That totally backs up what we are seeing on the OBD2 port, okay? If you had a code like, let's say 24 would flash 1, 2, pause, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then it would have a long pause, and then it would go 1, 2, then 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's how you read it, like Morse code. I have a sheet with all the codes on, so you can obviously have that, and then if you need to, you can reference that and you'll know exactly what sensor is giving you a problem. Okay, right. The other thing that does as well, which is I do want to mention, is there's another part to putting the ECU into diagnostics mode, and that is the fact that it locks the timing at 10 degrees. So again, this is a JZ block, so they're all pretty similar. You can see down here we've got 0, 5, 10, and 15 degrees. So if you had to bridge pin 13 and 5 in the OBD2 port, start the engine up, you'll see that the timing is locked to 10 degrees. So you can take your timing light, put it around cylinder 1 cord here, bogey cord, spark plug lead, whatever you want to call it. And effectively you can then use the timing light to see, and you can see there's one of the marks over there. You can see whether you are at 10 degrees and make sure that it is correct. So if you think that you are out, and this is miraculous almost, but you can see my timing marks have lined up literally in straight there. Right, that's a bit weird. So you can see my mark, it's close enough, it's next to 0 over there. So that's the kind of mark. Usually you do what I've done there and sort of mark it up with some white paint. And obviously then with your timing light, you can see it much better, and you can see that you've got 10 degrees of timing. If you don't, either there's a problem with your crank sensor, could be dirty. Your wheel, your crank pulley could be delaminating from the piece of rubber in the middle there. That could also cause you an issue. Or you genuinely could just be out of time. And so therefore, before you pull the covers off to check all of this, you can just do it with a timing light. Nice and easy and simple. Nothing too complicated there. But be careful. If you do leave the paperclip in and go for a drive, well, guess what? You're going to be locked at 10 degrees of timing, and it's going to drive really badly. You're going to feel like you've got no power, and you're going to be like, what have I done? Okay, so just make sure when you are doing diagnostics that you do remove whatever you're doing, okay? And a nice indication is your check engine light. If your check engine light goes on solid with the ignition on before you start it and goes off when you start it, well, you haven't got the paperclip in there bridging those 2 terminals. All right. So if you guys have any questions, please let me know down below, or you can get hold of us via email at info@phoenixenginemanagement.com. You can also find us on Facebook as well. You can send us a message there, and we'll try and get back to you as soon as we can. Just in regards to setups like this one in particular, we could do for the customer because he was able to supply us with the GX100 engine harness that I could reference against the diagrams, confirm everything was correct before we went ahead and built one of these harnesses. Okay, so if you have other Toyota or Lexus vehicles that you would like to build a plug-and-play harness for, yes, it is something that we can do. Yes, we do require the original engine harness from the original car so we can map out all of the body plugs and get the measurements correct to see where we need to interface from. Now, obviously, that poses a problem. All of our prices are based on materials used. So if that is the case, you must be willing to send the original harness to us so that basically we can then map it out. I can design the whole thing on my harness design program, and then it will tell me exactly what the cost is going to be. So do bear in mind, it's not something that I can give you a price over the phone. I will have to draw and design that entire harness before I can give you a price, okay? But if you have any other questions, please let us know down below, and we will see you again soon. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.
Fight, never quit, do it right, play the game, win it life, have no shame, there's no time, feel the pain, live the grind, I could change, in my mind, pick a lane, commit and climb, the only way to win it life, I never miss, that's fact, taking big swings, put your hand to the bat, put me in the ring, you'll go out in a bag, cause I sing what I mean and I bring it to the mad light, ain't got time to kill, I got time to feel, I took a red pill, I know life's short so I wanna live real, but how's it supposed to feel?